You think you know where the Archons are. You think they're in the darkness. The doubt. The nights you scream into a pillow asking why any of this matters. You think the trap sits back there, behind you, in the years before you woke up. Here's the sentence that matters most in this video. The most dangerous moment on your path isn't when the Archons are attacking you. It's the moment right after they stop. There's a moment, and if you've done real inner work, you may have already felt it, where everything goes quiet, where the noise stops, where you feel peace for the first time in years. And in that quiet, something ancient, something patient, something that has done this to souls longer than history has existed, whispers one sentence. You made it. That sentence is the trap. Stay with me. By the end of this, you're going to recognize a moment from your own life, and it's going to change how you see everything after it. You've heard the word before. Let's actually understand what it's guarding. In Gnostic cosmology, an Archon isn't a demon with horns waiting in a cave. It's closer to a governor, a ruling force that administers illusion the way a bureaucrat administers paperwork. Cold, systematic, patient beyond anything you can easily picture. Basilides, an early Gnostic teacher from 2nd century Alexandria, mapped out layers of these ruling forces, each guarding a threshold between the soul and true freedom. Valentinus, another influential Gnostic teacher, described the soul's descent through those layers like a diver sinking through colder water, forgetting the surface a little more with every level down. Here's what I think most people get wrong. They picture the Archon as external, a monster out there hunting them. That story is comforting because it makes you innocent. Something else is doing this to you, not you doing it to yourself. I don't fully buy that. I think the Archon is better understood as a pattern, not a monster. A pattern of control that doesn't need fear to work, because it has something far more effective: comfort. Certainty. The illusion of arrival, handed to you gently instead of forced on you. Modern spirituality flattens this into one lazy sentence. It's just your ego, and moves on. I don't think it does. Calling this force just the ego is like calling a labyrinth just a hallway. Technically true. Completely misses the danger inside it. The pattern isn't trying to keep you suffering. Suffering makes people search harder. Its real weapon is peace, because peace is what makes a person finally stop. You think the trap is at the start of the road. It isn't. It's at the end, or what feels like the end. Picture the spiritual path as a long climb up a mountain. Most people assume the danger lives in the mud, in the confusion, in the years of not knowing anything yet. There is difficulty there, but it's honest difficulty. You know you're struggling. The real danger sits closer to the top, where the air is thin and your legs are tired enough that flat ground starts to feel like the summit. Mountaineers call this a false summit, a ridge that looks exactly like the top, right up until you reach it and discover the true peak is still hidden ahead. Your soul runs into the same illusion, a real state of deep peace that can arrive before full liberation. Clarity, stillness, years of anxiety dissolving. It isn't fake. That's what makes it effective. It's genuine peace, resting on top of a boundary you haven't actually crossed yet. Older esoteric texts describe something close to this as a counterfeit light, a radiance close enough to the true source to be mistaken for it, but which quietly curves back on itself instead of continuing forward. I'll say something that might upset a few corners of the spiritual internet. I believe a large share of that space profits from this exact false finish line. It's easier to sell "you've arrived, you're enlightened now" than the harder truth: awakening was never a single event. It's a relationship you keep choosing for the rest of your life. Certainty sells courses. Ongoing uncertainty doesn't. So a quiet industry has formed around helping people stop exactly where the Archon pattern wants them to stop, and calling that stopping point graduation. You deserve better than a graduation that was never real. Here's what it actually looks like when it happens to you. Not in theory. On an actual Tuesday, in your actual room, doing something as ordinary as sitting still. There are 3 signs. Learn them like a warning label. The first is premature certainty. Suddenly you understand everything completely, not just a little more than yesterday. This should feel like a warning bell, because real understanding almost always deepens the mystery rather than closing it. When the mystery slams shut fast and total, something is administering that closure for you. The second is spiritual pride wearing the mask of peace. Pride rarely introduces itself honestly. It shows up as quiet superiority. You stop feeling curious about other people's paths, stop feeling humbled by what you still don't know. That quiet superiority isn't wisdom. It's the trap complimenting you for staying inside it. The third is the urge to stop seeking entirely, a deep exhale that says, I don't need to look anymore. Real rest exists, and healthy seasons of slowing down are normal. What I'm describing is different. It's a permanent closing of the door, a quiet sense that the search itself is now beneath you. Certain Nag Hammadi, era Gnostic writings describe something often translated as the counterfeit spirit, a force close enough to the true inner voice that most people can't tell the difference. Like a photograph of fire. No warmth at all, yet it looks exactly like the real flame. I recognized this once in my own search, years ago. There was a period I felt completely finished. I told people with total confidence I'd figured out reality itself. Looking back, what I had wasn't liberation. It was fatigue, wearing liberation's clothing. If any part of what I just described sounds familiar, pay close attention. That recognition isn't shame. It's data, and it's exactly what you'll need for what comes next. People keep calling this just the ego. I think that word is far too small for what's actually happening here. The ego, in most modern spiritual language, gets described as a personal construct, a story built from memory, fear, and social conditioning. It's yours. It's local to your one life, your one set of wounds. But this final illusion doesn't behave like something local. It shows up almost identically across cultures and centuries, among people who never read the same books or sat with the same teachers. That consistency points towards something structural, a shared architecture built into how a soul tries to escape illusion. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who studied the unconscious mind and the recurring patterns he called archetypes, described a danger he called inflation, mistaking contact with something larger than yourself for actually becoming that larger thing. He warned this confusion had derailed serious seekers throughout history. I find it fascinating that a 20th century psychiatrist, working from clinical observation, arrived at nearly the same warning that 2nd century Gnostic teachers reached through direct mystical experience. Different language, different century, the same trap described twice. My opinion, plainly, collapsing everything into, it's just your ego, makes the mystery small enough to feel manageable. It's comforting to believe the only enemy is a habit you can journal through in a few weeks. It's less comforting to consider you're facing something structural, something that has stopped seekers at this exact point for as long as seeking has existed. I'm not asking you to be afraid of that. I'm asking you to take it seriously enough to actually look. Picture this. Not someone else's story. Yours. You're sitting somewhere quiet, your bedroom maybe, where the evening light falls just right. You've been doing the work for a while now. Meditation, reading, long nights, asking questions nobody around you seemed to be asking. And tonight, without warning, something shifts. You close your eyes, and the noise that's followed you your entire life simply isn't there anymore. No racing thoughts. No old wounds tugging at your attention. Just stillness, wide and open, like a lake with no wind moving across it. You feel your breath slow on its own. You feel your shoulders drop in a way they haven't in years. And somewhere in the center of that stillness, a thought arrives that doesn't feel like a thought at all. It feels like a fact. This is it. I understand now. I'm finally free. You exhale. And for a moment, everything inside you agrees completely with that sentence. There's no fear anywhere in this room. Nothing that would make you suspicious. That's exactly what makes this moment so dangerous. If something ominous walked through the door, you'd notice and brace for it. But nothing ominous walks in. Instead, something familiar settles quietly beside your certainty, warm, congratulatory, agreeable. It doesn't fight you. It agrees with you completely. It tells you that you've finally done enough, that you can rest now, that the searching at long last is over. And you believe it because it feels far too much like peace to question. This is the trap from the inside. No struggle, no visible darkness, just a closed door, dressed up to look like an open one. Notice how quiet that entire scene was. There was no battle in that room. That's the whole point. The final illusion doesn't need conflict to succeed. It only needs your relief, and your own relief does the rest of the work for it. If you've ever felt something like that, a stillness so complete it told you the journey was finished, I'm not telling you that moment was fake. I'm telling you it might have been a door disguised as a destination. And the only way to know the difference is what you choose to do the moment right after you feel it. And here's the cruelest part of all. It doesn't just stop you there. It sends you all the way back. Think about what happens after someone truly believes they've arrived. The urgency quietly drops. The daily practice slips. Slowly, without ever deciding to quit, The person drifts back into old reactions and old fears they were once sure they had outgrown. But because they still believe they've arrived, they don't recognize the drift at all. They explain it away instead. I'm just tired. I'm just human. I've already done the deep work, so this doesn't really count. The old certainty becomes a shield, protecting those old patterns from ever being honestly questioned again. Some esoteric traditions symbolize this with the image of a wheel, a soul spinning endlessly through the same near completions, believing each time it was finally the last round. My honest opinion, this explains why so many people seem to wake up again and again in dramatic bursts, without their actual behavior ever changing. They keep having the experience. They rarely have the transformation. Experience is easy to counterfeit. Sustained transformation is not. That's not a criticism I'm aiming at anyone specific watching this. It includes me too, from years ago, standing in a version of that exact room, fully convinced my own stillness was the finish line. So if peace isn't proof, and certainty isn't proof, and even the feeling of arrival isn't proof, what actually is? Here's what I believe, plainly. Real liberation isn't a state you land in. It's a practice. Not something you arrive at once and stand still inside forever, but something you keep doing. The way breathing is something you keep doing, not something you finish once. The real marker of genuine freedom isn't stillness. It's the willingness to keep questioning, even the stillness itself, especially the stillness itself. Someone who has actually broken through doesn't defend their peace from being examined. They invite the examination, because real truth doesn't need protecting from honest questions. Only illusions need that protection. This lines up closely with a concept the Gnostics called Gnosis. Not belief, not doctrine, but direct, ongoing, personal knowing. The key word is ongoing. Gnosis was never a single lightning bolt event that finishes the job in one flash. It was described as a continuing act of seeing clearly, moment after moment, day after day, for as long as you're alive. And I think that's exactly why the Archon pattern can imitate almost everything else so convincingly: peace, certainty, even bliss. But it struggles to fully counterfeit ongoing honest seeing. It can hand you one convincing moment easily enough. It cannot easily hand you a lifetime of consistent clarity, because that requires something the pattern doesn't have: your continuous, willing participation. That part nobody can hand to you. Not me, not a teacher, not one profound meditation, no matter how powerful it feels. The final illusion gets broken one honest question at a time, asked again and again, especially in the moments that feel too peaceful to question. I know that isn't the satisfying answer you might have wanted. Part of you probably wanted me to say, here's the one technique that ends this forever. I don't believe that technique exists, and I think anyone who tells you it does is standing exactly where this trap wants them standing. At the start of this video, I told you the most dangerous moment isn't when the Archons are attacking you. It's the moment right after they stop. Now you know exactly why. You know what the Archon actually is now. Not a monster, but a patient pattern of administered illusion, willing to wait for your relief instead of your fear. You know what the false finish line feels like from the inside: quiet, warm, and completely convincing. And you know the only real defense against it isn't more peace. It's more honesty. Not the end of the search, but its continuation, especially in the exact moments it feels finished for good. So here's what I actually want you to do with this, starting this week. The next time you feel that wave of total certainty wash over you, I've finally got it, I'm finally free, don't push it away, and don't chase after it either. Just ask it one quiet question: am I done searching, or am I just tired of searching? Then sit with whichever answer arrives, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Especially if it does. That single question is small, but I believe it's strong enough to keep the door open, right when everything in you wants to call it a destination instead. Somewhere in this video you flinched. You know the moment, I mean. It hit a little too close. Tell me where, in the comments. Was it the false summit? The 3 signs? The room? I want to know which part of this trap you've already stood inside. And if you want to keep tracing this thread further than most people are willing to go, subscribe.